Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our live coverage of the latest mission from Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. I'm Will Robinson-Smith, reporter with Spaceflight now, so good to be with you on this Friday, May 30th. We're broadcasting, as we always do, from the Spaceflight Now News Bureau here at NASA's Kennedy Space Center. Bit of a dreary morning to kick things off as we are tracking the, I will say, hopeful launch of the latest GPS satellite, technology that extends not only to government needs, but touches all of our lives in various ways, helping us get here and fro and everywhere in between. Currently, T-minus 1 hour, 57 minutes, 40 seconds and counting to the opening of a 15-minute window. Fairly short launch opportunity today for this Falcon 9 rocket, which is hoping to send the 7th of the GPS 3 series satellites into into medium Earth orbit. As we're coming on the air here, just a little before 11:30 here on the East Coast, you're actually starting to see a slightly better view of the Falcon 9 rocket than we had even just moments ago, as a band of rain was pushing through and pretty thoroughly obscuring the Falcon 9 rocket from our camera's perspectives. Looking live right now from our vantage point here at the Kennedy Space Center press site of Falcon 9 rocket there at Space Launch Complex 40 at the Cape. As we're getting things rolling here with this morning's coverage, if you haven't already done so, you could do us a big favor just by clicking the like button, share the stream, allow some more folks to find their way into this live launch coverage as we get rolling merrily along here today. Weather is the big story of the day, in addition to obviously the payload that is hoping to launch. We'll be talking about this throughout the broadcast and watching it closely as various Phase 2 lightning warnings get put into place, including one that we're just hearing over the intercom system now. Currently, the vehicle assembly building and various parts of KSC and Cape Canaveral Space Force Station are in a Phase 2 lightning warning, as well as Pad 40 also currently in a Phase 2 lightning warning. Our thanks to our moderators who are here with us in the live chat as we're getting our coverage rolling. I see Callistia Lee is joining us today, and scrolling to see if any of the other mods are hanging out in the chat. Not seeing any at the moment, but if you do see some of them pop on through, be sure to give them a big old Spaceflight Now hello. You can help make their job easier just by following the rules of the live chat. We ask that you refrain from delving into overt politics and religion, that you converse in English so that our moderators can respond accordingly, that you, though it's tempting, ask you to not use all caps when you type, and also be sure to treat each other with kindness in the live chat, and we'll all get along swimmingly. Also want to thank our channel member community for being here with us, making these live launch opportunities possible. So thanks to folks like MAH Florida, Kevin Nunn, Dagger41, the person that exists. That's a great handle. Silver for Lunch, Cumulus Granatus, Mark Potachnik, Jim Fowley, and many others. Channel membership comes with a number of perks, including discounts at our online shop, that is shop.spaceflightnow.com. Access to member-only videos here on YouTube, access to our members-only Discord server, and, of course, the ability to watch all of our live launch liftoff moments from here at the Cape in 4K. And being that this is a GPS launch, we've got a special guest that's going to be joining us here in just a moment. Kind enough to brave the rain to join us here for a few minutes to talk about the spacecraft that, weather permitting, will be launching in just shy of 2 hours from now. So we'll keep our fingers crossed that the fine folks of the 45th Weather Squadron are able to find an ace pocket and be able to send this spacecraft on its way to MEO shortly. We're also, of course, joined by our photography team who's out and about getting ready to track the Falcon 9 rocket if it is able to leave the pad today. Our Adam Bernstein out on the Cape side, Michael Kane a little bit further south as well. John Pisani here manning our cameras at the press site. If you're not already following the fellows on X, you can find them at their social channel handles right here. You can find Adam at Apern NYC, Michael Kane at MD Kane Jr., John Pisani at John Pisani Photo. And be sure to follow Spaceflight Now, simply at Spaceflight Now. You can also find us on Blue Sky, Threads, and Facebook if you yourself are not on X. We'll also be joined a little bit later in our coverage by our friends Pete Carstens with Max Q Productions, as well as Chuck and Jen Briggs with C&J Images. As we're coming to about an hour and 52 minutes before liftoff, we're going to go ahead and pause the commentary for just a moment as we're making our final fine-tunings for our live interview with a very special guest from Lockheed Martin coming up here in just a moment. So bear with us, hit the like button, allow some more folks to find their way in, and we'll be back with that interview, folks, in just a minute or two. And welcome back to Spaceflight Now's live coverage of hopefully what will be the launch of the GPS 3-7 mission. Of course, you might be able to hear with our microphones outside, the rain is falling quite heavily here at the Kennedy Space Center press site. We're currently T-minus 1 hour, 48 minutes, and 8 seconds to the planned liftoff. Again, they've got a 15-minute window to make this happen, so the pressure is on the launch weather officers of the 45th Weather Squadron to really work their magic and make that happen. But speaking of folks that have already worked their magic, they've done the hard work to get up to this point. Lockheed Martin, the company that actually manufactured, engineered the GPS-3 constellation and is getting ready to launch this next one. And I'm joined by Crystal Horton, who is an engineer, a former intern with Lockheed Martin, now a full-time engineer. Thanks so much for joining us this morning.
Thank you so much for having me. It's an exciting day for the GPS program, and we're really excited to be here.
Yeah, exactly. And launch whenever Florida allows. I know this is sort of just the wait and see, and you've gotten through the hard part already. So, being that you've seen now a couple of these GPS satellites come through the pipeline to launch, for you being at this point today with hopefully, launch just less than 2 hours away, what are the feelings for you right now?
It is absolutely exciting. Our team has worked so hard up until this point. GPS is an incredible program made up of so many brilliant minds that work effortlessly to get these satellites built. Again, this is GPS SVO8. This is our 8th in the GPS 3 series, and we're really excited to see it go today. Our team is here helping support launch, but we also have an entire team in Denver continuing to build GPS satellites for future launches and future capabilities in the GPS constellation. So it's really exciting to be here today, and we can't wait to see Katherine Johnson launch off the pad.
And we'll get to Katherine Johnson in just a moment, but speaking of names, you may see the graphic above our heads that says GPS 3-7. We just heard her say that this is space vehicle number 8. So for those at home who are not in the weeds on spacecraft and mission nomenclature, can you just give us a brief Reader's Digest version of how this name happens to fall in the way that it does?
Yes, so we recently launched our rapid response Trailblazer earlier this year. RRT was a GPS satellite that rapidly needed to be launched. Our United States Space Force customer called it up for launch rapidly, and given just the environment and timeline of that, our team had to work very tactically to get this satellite prepared. Hence being coined the Rapid Response Trailblazer, we were able to get our vehicle prepped for launch, brought out to Florida and on a pad and into orbit in an incredible timeline. SVO8, our next satellite to launch today, is following a very similar rapid response. We've completed this satellite in just over 3 months, which is significantly faster than the launch preparations for previous missions and previous GPS satellites that generally have longer timelines to go from final completion in our assembly test and launch facility in Colorado out to the pad here. So we're rapidly trying to increase capabilities for GPS to get from Colorado here and into orbit, to get those capabilities on orbit as quickly as we can to help support our customers' needs and the rapidly evolving needs of GPS.
And this is the second time that a GPS satellite has been switched now from a Vulcan flight to a SpaceX Falcon 9. And in fact, we were just learning earlier this week that the call-up came just a few months before, we got to this point at the pad. I believe for Lockheed Martin, that call came in late February. So, when you have a GPS satellite in storage, it's not just as simple as just, opening the storage door and then putting it in a box and sending it out to Florida. What are the things that you had to consider, and especially learning from that rapid response mission, now bringing that into Space Vehicle number 8's mission?
So we were able to do a lot of preps ahead of time. Like you said, it's not as simple as just loading it into a box and shipping it to Florida. There's so many preps we have to do in Denver. We make sure that the battery is fully operational, so we'll run it through a series of electrical tests, make sure it's healthy while in Denver. We then put on all of our deployables. We deploy our solar arrays, ensure those are fully functional. We load into a large shipping container, purge it under nitrogen, put it on a semi-truck, drive it down to an Air Force base, fly it out here. It's a whole process. And our team from the RRT mission has really optimized some of those tasks that we can complete ahead of time, ensuring that we have the best team trained and ready to go so that when we receive a call-up letter, that team can immediately jump on those launch preps in Denver, get it out here. We do a series of preps here in Florida to ensure that the vehicle is performing exactly in Florida as we said it performed in Denver. So we do another series of checks and get the vehicle fueled. We do wait and see G to send to our launch provider today, SpaceX, soon ULA on Vulcan. And so we do all of those preps ahead of time to make sure that we're ready to go. And so optimizing a lot of the lessons learned from RRT made SVO8's rapid timeline this launch possible. And so we're really grateful for the team that's dedicated to finding those areas for improvement.
Yeah, Malik said in a press call earlier this week that, this go around was just, infinitely easier having gone through RRT-1, now just basically spinning it up and repeating the process again.
Yes, absolutely.
And so, talking about the GPS constellation itself, obviously, most people have a cell phone that has some type of GPS capable, factor in it. Not going to, name names and do any advertising for folks, but with this latest addition in the GPS constellation, one of the things that's been added to these newer satellites is the M code factor, a military code. Can you talk about the importance of that element in the satellite constellation, as this is, I believe we're told, the 26th that has M code capabilities?
Correct. So M code is really important for our resilience in military communications that are provided through GPS satellites. So that M code signal is really important for GPS's overall performance and increased capabilities going into the rest of the 3 series and into the 3F series. Like you mentioned, our 2Rs that are currently in orbit do not have this capability. So when we're continuing to talk about the importance of GPS, ensuring that we continue to make GPS satellites and involve them, it's to replenish things like those 2Rs. We love to talk about how old your cell phone was, and if you compare your cell phone 20 years ago to the one you have today, those capabilities have rapidly evolved. It's the same with the GPS satellite. They are all still fully functioning in orbit. We have 31 satellites in the active constellation, and they're all fully functioning, but it's important to continue to replenish those older technologies from the 2Rs that don't have M code, replenish their seats with new satellites that have that capability and so we are really excited to get these new satellites up and see what different capabilities we can provide. Every time we put a new satellite up with M code, it helps strengthen that entire M code network in the GPS constellation, so it's not just adding one new satellite, it enhances the constellation as a whole.
And I know we're still a couple of years from the next generation of GPS satellites, the 3Fs, from being launched. Can you talk about some of the differences between the 3 series that is currently on orbit, about to add another one, and the 3F that's going to be launched by both SpaceX and ULA in the future?
Yes, absolutely. We have a bunch of new capabilities on the 3F satellites. The biggest difference is they're larger. They're larger and allow us to host new capabilities. It allows us to incorporate late integration hardware. If a few years from now a new revolutionary technology comes up, we have now the capacity and space to consider adding new payloads to GPS. So it allows us to have that flexibility and continuing to adapt GPS going forward. We do have new payload elements. We have a search and rescue payload. It's a civilian search and rescue antenna that allows us to ping a GPS satellite on the ground from user GPS receivers to help during those kind of intense rescue scenarios where GPS coverage may not generally have access in rugged environments or things of that nature. We also have the regional military protection dish. It's a large, essentially magnifying glass for GPS. We're able to shine a GPS signal on that, and it operates on a gimbal, so we can focus GPS signals over particular regions on Earth, and it increases anti-jamming capabilities for just that increased confidence in GPS performance on the ground.
And, we talked a little bit about some of the improved engineering and manufacturing qualities that have come through getting this mission ready for RRT-1. How, back in Littleton, Colorado, are you starting to speed up the timelines as you're working on the 3F series? What are some of the, not shortcuts, but things that you're able to optimize, really?
Yes, so we've learned so much from the GPS 3 program. The entire GPS program had an initiative to try and identify areas that could reduce costs for the 3F program. We have an extremely experienced team. Something our team leverages is allowing kind of talent sharing across the 2 programs. So our technicians who have had years of experience building the GPS 3s that are proving to be extremely successful are the same minds that are going to be building the 3F series. So there's a lot of talent sharing there. We have an incredible team of engineers that is constantly interfacing with our production team to ensure we understand some fundamental differences in the build, quickly identifying if there's shortcomings in our production process that can help optimize how we manufacture a GPS satellite. So our team is working hand in hand together with both our program as well as the production staff to try and identify those areas where redundant testing can be eliminated, areas where we can optimize testing if we can perform 2 system tests at the same time as opposed to doing them sequentially. We're identifying all kinds of things like that to make 3F as quick as possible to produce and get into the constellation.
And before I let you go, we mentioned at the top of the interview that the spacecraft, not only is named GPS 3-7 Space Vehicle number 8, but is specifically named Katherine Johnson. Lockheed Martin has a history of naming these GPS satellites. Can you talk about how that pillar of NASA history and important mathematics was chosen for this particular satellite?
Yes, absolutely. Our customer is committed to choosing names for our GPS satellites that are based around explorers that contributed heavily to getting us to this point in whether it's technology or ability to perform GPS specific tasks. Katherine Johnson, being a historic mathematician, really paved the way for GPS and any satellite really to get to this point of utter confidence and getting a team brought up to speed to bring these capabilities to fruition. And so we're really proud to have Katherine Johnson as the name of SVO8. We look forward to the future satellites and what explorers our customer chooses to name them. They are an important part of our history and our ability to be here today. So we're really excited to get to celebrate Katherine Johnson and her legacy.
And of course, Sally Ride was the name of the last satellite. Was a little bit quieter because it was the RT-1 mission, so not all the pomp and circumstance going into it, but you can sort of retroactively celebrate that now.
Oh, absolutely. I was very proud of Sally Ride. Our mission patches for her were really cool, and we're looking forward to the mission patches for Katherine Johnson, so we're really excited for that aspect as well.
Last question. Once, weather permitting, of course, you just see a flash of lightning in the camera behind you. Once the satellite is launched and it begins its on-orbit commissioning, what's the timeline to getting it integrated into the constellation?
So Lockheed Martin will perform checks, ensure all of our deployables go for a few weeks right after launch. At that point, we'll turn it over to the Space Force once we have deemed it operational, and they will operate it as a member of the fully functioning constellation at that time. So a few weeks post-launch, once we reach that medium Earth orbit and we are able to complete our checks at Lockheed, we'll turn it over to the Space Force, and there'll be a new operational satellite in the constellation.
Crystal with Lockheed, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much.
And of course, we're just now 1 hour, 36 minutes and some change ahead of the, fingers crossed, launch of this GPS satellite. So don't go anywhere. We'll have much more live coverage coming for you in the next hour and a half. You're watching Spaceflight Now's coverage of the GPS 3-7 mission. We'll be right back. Local time now 11:52 a.m. Eastern. As we're coming back with commentary, I want to thank Lockheed Martin for stepping in with us to talk about the GPS satellite, as we are very much not seeing the rocket anymore at this point between us and our view of the pad. Currently still in a Phase 2 lightning warning here at the Kennedy Space Center press site, as well as extending to other areas at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. We do have word that the mission is targeting the end of the window now, so we've adjusted our countdown clock. Currently T-minus 1 hour, 43 minutes, 49 seconds and counting. Of course, while this is the primary day for the launch opportunity, SpaceX and Lockheed and the Space Force do have a 24-hour backup that is beginning at 1:18 p.m. Eastern, Saturday, May 31st. So we'll continue to watch for any updates on that. Taking a quick look at our live chat, I want to thank the nearly 800 of you who are watching with us live at this point in the broadcast. If you haven't already, if you could give this live stream a like, allow some more folks to find their way into this coverage, that would be greatly appreciated, as we're continuing to watch the weather outlook and see if things are able to improve enough to find that narrow window of opportunity at the end of the launch window today. Do want to thank channel member Jim Fowley for being a member with us now for 10 months. Thanks for sticking with us, Jim. It says, good interview, you will. And certainly appreciate the fine folks at Lockheed Martin again for braving the weather to join us in our offices here at the historic Fishbowl at the press site for that conversation to talk about all things GPS of today's mission. As we're awaiting the go-ahead for the start of fueling with today's Falcon 9 flight, let's take a moment and talk about the countdown timeline for today's mission. Coming up in just about an hour is when the SpaceX launch director will make the call on the start of prop load. Assuming that everything technically is moving along as expected and they feel like they've got chance at the weather, then they would give the green light to start tanking the Falcon 9. That process would begin at the T-minus 35-minute mark with the loading of RP-1, which is a rocket-grade kerosene aboard the Falcon 9's first and second stages. At the same time, liquid oxygen begins flowing on board the Falcon 9's first stage. T-minus 30 minutes, SpaceX will start loading a cryogenic helium onto the pressure vessels for the Falcon 9's first stage. Same is true on the second stage a few minutes thereafter. Helium is important because it's used to pressurize the main propellant tanks during flight. T-minus 23 minutes is when the second stage RP-1 tank is full. At T-minus 20 minutes and 50 seconds is when the strong back chill down process gets underway. That's when SpaceX is conditioning the feed lines ahead of second stage liquid oxygen load. That process will begin visually with the so-called big vent starting at about T-minus 20 minutes and 20 seconds here at the pad. Although how visual it will be today, given all the rain, we'll just have to wait and see, my friends. On the other side of the big vent is the start of second stage lock zone, which begins at the T-minus 16 minute mark. Moving right along, 7 minutes out is when the engine chill gets underway. That's when SpaceX starts to flow a small amount of liquid oxygen through the plumbing and turbo pumps to help protect the engines from the risk of thermal shock and damage during the startup sequence. About 6 minutes out, the first stage kerosene tank is full. Then at T-minus 4.5 minutes, we'll see the strong back retract sequence get underway. It's when the clamp arms just beneath the payload fairings open up. Then the transporter erector, otherwise known as the strong back, will pull back a few degrees away from the Falcon 9 rocket and stay in that position until liftoff, at which point it'll pull back in a much more rapid fashion to clear the way for the vertical climb of the Falcon 9. 3 minutes out, the first stage liquid oxygen tank is full. Same is true on the second stage about a minute afterwards, at which point the rocket is fully loaded with 1 million pounds of propellant. In the final 60 seconds, as we hear the call that the Falcon 9 is in startup, control of the countdown is handed over from the ground sequencer to the Falcon 9's onboard flight computers, and the propellant tanks are brought up to flight pressure. SpaceX launch director will give their go for launch 45 seconds before takeoff. The engine ignition command is issued at T-minus 3 seconds, and if all 9 Merlin engines are healthy and ignite as expected, the command will be given for the hold-down clamps to release the Falcon 9 rocket for a T0 liftoff. Once again, currently targeting the end of the 15-minute launch window today at 1:37 p.m. Eastern. T-minus 1 hour and 37 minutes from now. Time now, T-minus 1 hour, 35 minutes, 22 seconds and counting ahead of the planned launch of the GPS 3-7 mission. As we talked about in our conversation with Crystal Horton, this will be space vehicle number 8 that's launching, so the 8th of the GPS 3 series of satellites. The road for launch with the last of the GPS 3 satellites, which launched back in December on another Falcon 9 rocket, known in the run-up to the mission simply as RRT-1, later revealed to be Rapid Response Trailblazer mission, was quite the mission to get going behind the scenes. It was trickier than a typical GPS call-up, not only because of the shortened timeline, but also because of some of the logistics hurdles that were unknowingly thrown in the way of Lockheed Martin in sort of an unavoidable manner. So back last month, as a matter of fact, when we were at the 40th Space Symposium over in Colorado, we had the opportunity to talk with Malik Musawir, who's the Vice President of Navigation Systems at Lockheed Martin, and learn a little bit more behind the scenes about what it took to get the GPS-3 Space Vehicle number 7 satellite out of storage to the pad, and saw that launch that we got back in December. So this is part of our conversation with Malik about the road to launch for the last GPS satellite and how it informs. It's going to be hopefully happening in just about an hour and a half.
So around the fall time frame of 2024, it was identified that there was a need to demonstrate the ability to rapidly launch in a relatively short time domain. So in partnership with our Space Force customer, they had identified, well, GPS has a payload available, and we have a launch. We have a booster available. Let's marry those two capabilities together and use that as a demonstration of what it means to respond rapidly to be able to launch. So around that fall time frame is when that opportunity manifests itself. Our customer team reached out to us and said, hey, can you do this in the time domain of launching around December of 2024, which at that time was maybe 2.5.
We apologize for the curious audio issue we're having with that. We're going to go ahead and take a look and see if we can get those tech gremlins out of our system and re-rack that for you so you can hear it more clearly. Time now T-minus 1 hour, 29 minutes, 45 seconds and counting. With the rain lifting a little bit while we work to get this video audio issue sorted, taking a closer look at the Falcon 9 rocket there that you see at the pad, If you notice just above the black inner stage on the Falcon 9 rocket, you can see a light gray band that we don't always see around the second stage of the vehicle. That is a special gray paint that is used on certain SpaceX missions that require either a long coast phase or have missions that are particularly long either in the Earth's shadow or in the sun. And essentially it allows the propellant on board the second stage to remain at a more consistent temperature for those key missions. This is a technology that was first introduced, in fact, with a partnership between SpaceX and the National Launch System with the Space Systems Command, part of the U.S. Space Force, as they began their national space portfolio. And of course, as soon as I brought that up, we've got some rain moving back into the area, so obscuring the pad one more time. But we'll continue to keep an eye on this system as we continue to roll on through the next hour and a half of the count. Time now, T-minus 1 hour, 25 minutes, 31 seconds and counting. Weather, of course, continues to be the story of the day. As you can see, we currently don't have a clear view to the pad from our vantage point here at the press site. I want to take a look at the reason why as we're getting some weather data here. As you can see, that rainbow-colored noise is some of the heaviest bands of rain that are sitting. Oh, that's actually the lightning that is wreaking havoc on this launch opportunity right now, and hopefully that will lessen as a potential impact to launch as it stands right now. If you're just joining us, SpaceX is currently targeting the end of the window for this launch opportunity. And you can see the clouds are moving fairly quickly from west to east, so hopefully we were watching for potential openings in the weather pattern here, and seeing just a little bit of hope that there's a pocket that may be coming up right where SpaceX and the 45th Weather Squadron are targeting at the end of the window, but it'll really come right down to the wire here. Time now currently T-minus 1 hour, 21 minutes, 36 seconds and counting. We believe we've got the audio issues sorted out here with this clip that we wanted to present to you from our conversation with Malik Musawir from Lockheed Martin. So again, this is part of our conversation that we had during the 40th Space Symposium in Colorado Springs, Colorado at the start of the week, where we talked about the GPS-3 space vehicle number 7 and its very interesting road to get from Colorado to the launch pad and the process of getting this RRT-1 or Rapid Response Trailblazer mission back in December up and running.
So around the fall timeframe of 2024, it was identified that there was a need to demonstrate the ability to rapidly launch in a relatively short time domain. So in partnership with our Space Force customer, they had identified, well, GPS. GPS has a payload available, and we have a launch. We have a booster available. Let's marry those two capabilities together and use that as a demonstration of what it means to respond rapidly, to be able to launch. So around that fall timeframe is when that opportunity manifested itself. Our customer team reached out to us and said, hey, can you do this in the time domain of launching around the December of 2024, which at the time was maybe 2.5, 3-ish months. I'm trying to remember the exact timeline. But within 3 months, can you get a vehicle tested, shipped, and received at Cape Canaveral, Florida, getting ready for launch processing and launch testing, integrated into the fairing, and then on the booster in a matter of, like I said, 2.5 to 3 months? And the answer was absolutely, we can do this. And then keep in mind, we're referring to it as GPS-7, so we have a history, right? We have a history just on the GPS-3 mission alone of launching 6 vehicles with great success. So we wanted to carry that success forward into Vehicle 7. So naturally, when that call came up, we were excited. We were going to follow the traditional testing and shipment procedure. Nature doesn't always have its way of playing along with those best laid plans. And so right at that time, there was a hurricane that had just hit Florida, and there was a hurricane barreling in from the Gulf, also about to make landfall in Florida. And what we had an opportunity to do at that time was make a decision. The C-17 aircraft that we would normally use to fly a vehicle from Buckley Space Force Base to Cape Canaveral, that fleet was grounded, and we didn't have access to it. So we had to find an alternative approach. So within a matter of hours of identifying the fact that we couldn't catch a flight on a C-17, we had to get a road team leaving Colorado and starting to drive the route of what it would take to drive a vehicle on the back of a flatbed of a truck and be able to get it to Florida in a safe manner. So think about that as things that you and I take for granted, like guiding and fitting underneath an overpass as you're driving on a highway. We had to make sure that our vehicle can safely get there and arrive at the Cape in a timely manner. So we kicked that process off and mapped out the route. We departed from Colorado, and then, like I said, nature has a way of throwing curveballs at us. Another hurricane was barreling in on Florida, but based on the timing and based on the weather forecast, we knew that we would be able to thread the needle, get it safely to Florida, into the safe holding of our Astrotech processing facility before the hurricane arrived, which we were able to do successfully. And then from there, that's when the clock is ticking. You start to go through space vehicle launch processing. So all of our launch vehicle integration activities start to take place. So we kicked that off, and we were executing that all through November into the mid part of December, and then culminating into that successful launch. And then shortly after we lifted off of the pad, it was identified that RRT was in fact GPS SBO-7. So carrying that over into GPS-8, hopefully with a lot less drama, so we were able to fly it via C-17, which we just shipped it last week. So it took off from Colorado, landed safely in Florida, and now it's actively processing in our Astrotech facility today, as we stand here today.
And again, our thanks to Malik and Lockheed Martin for that conversation. Time now, T-minus 1 hour, 13 minutes, 3 seconds and counting. Taking a look back at the vehicle assembly building at the moment, you can see that the rain is letting up just a little bit here at the press site. Looking at the pad shot there on the right, still pretty thoroughly blanketing pad 40. We remain under a phase 2 lightning warning basically across all areas of the Kennedy Space Center as well as Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. So if you are wondering why you haven't seen any views of the Falcon 9 from over on the Cape side of things, that is why. Our photographer Adam Bernstein is hunkering down in his vehicle at the moment, as is Michael Kane. As SpaceX is preparing for this GPS launch, hopefully in the next 1 hour and 11 minutes, they are also getting things ready over at Historic Launch Complex 39A for their next Falcon 9 flight, which is going to be a private astronaut mission to the International Space Station. The AX-4 mission, otherwise known as Axiom Mission 4, currently targeting a liftoff on June 8th, though we're watching to see if that date may be adjusted. This will be the first flight of SpaceX's fifth and planned final Dragon spacecraft to enter into the fleet. The mission comes shortly after the 5th anniversary of SpaceX conducting its first human spaceflight mission. That was the launch of Demo 2 with now former NASA astronauts Bob Behnken and Doug Hurley from this very same pad. May 30th, dubbed by SpaceX as Demo 2 Day, of course. SpaceX has flown 17 human spaceflight missions in that time, including 3 private astronaut missions to the International Space Station, a trio of commercial astronaut missions, including the Inspiration 4 flight, Polaris Dawn, and most recently Fram 2, over the polar regions of the globe. And of course, since Demo 2, they have flown all of the full crew rotation missions to the U.S. side of the space station, starting with Crew 1, which was the first full crew rotation mission, up through the current batch of astronauts on board the ISS, Crew 10, getting ready to do a handover with Crew 9, or excuse me, with Crew 11 coming up later on this summer. Crew 11 scheduled to launch no earlier than the end of July as it stands right now. We'll be watching pad 39 for the strong back, which you see there in the horizontal position. Eventually it will roll into the hangar, which is just off the camera point to the right. And when it emerges, it will have a Falcon 9 rocket with the Crew Dragon spacecraft yet to be named and announced, rolling out here in the days to come. The last several days have been busy for SpaceX out here making the needed adjustments to the top of the transporter erector, removing the payload fairing sling that we're used to seeing for non-crew or non-Dragon missions, I should say, replacing with the configuration that supports the Dragon spacecraft. Following that work, they will add the launch mount to the base of the transporter erector. They'll bring it back into a vertical position to do that work, and then it'll go back horizontal and then roll into the hangar to be integrated with the rocket. Just about an hour out from the planned launch of this Falcon 9 rocket, weather permitting. The Falcon 9 rocket that is supporting today's mission, the booster that is going to be flying for just its fourth time. Tail number B1092 in the SpaceX fleet. Began its flying career earlier this year, and that first mission started off with the launch of the Starlink 12-13 flight, which was back on February 27th. That was followed up by a National Security Space Launch Mission, or NSSL, flight NROL 69 on March 24th, followed up by CRS-32, its most recent jaunt to space and back, on April 21st of this year. 2 out of the 3 landings have been back at Landing Zone 1. First touchdown on the drone ship, just read the instructions. Today looking for that good landing out on SpaceX's other East Coast-based drone ship, that is A Shortfall of Gravitas. A successful landing today would be the 111th booster landing for that particular drone ship and SpaceX's 365th drone ship landing overall. Looking back at the historic vehicle assembly building, we're starting to see a little bit of hope, a little bit of blue out in the horizon there, as there is just a bit of a pocket of opportunity. It looks like it's starting to work its way out towards the pad. Hopefully it will be in the right place at the right time for today's launch. Of course, that'll be determined by the folks at the 45th Weather Squadron. And thankfully, we're seeing some of the weather clear here. You can see the multicolored lightning that is now offshore up to the north of the pad at this point in time. Clouds continue to push through, but you can see just behind that really big pocket of them, there is that clearing that we have started to see in our view of the vehicle assembly building. Of course, meteorologists are also watching for the presence of detached anvil clouds, particularly sticky things, since an anvil cloud can extend the impact of a thunderstorm far beyond the most immediate range of it, potentially as much as dozens of miles or more. Currently under an hour to go to the planned liftoff of this Falcon 9 rocket. We're less than 20 minutes away from the point at which the SpaceX launch director is going to make the call on the start of prop load today. Time now currently 49 minutes, 7 seconds and counting to the planned flight of this Falcon 9 rocket. For those who may just be joining us, you're watching Spaceflight Now's live coverage of the GPS-3 Space Vehicle number 8 mission. Looking live at the Falcon 9 rocket, standing tall at Space Launch Complex 40, SpaceX's workhorse pad here at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. Weather has been the sticking point here, but looking back at our wide shot here at the press side, it looks a little bit more acceptable. Of course, SpaceX is targeting the end of the launch window today for the planned Falcon 9 flight. If things don't pan out today, they do have a backup opportunity, another 15-minute window coming up tomorrow. And that window would open up at 1:18 p.m. Eastern. As we see with the vehicle assembly building shot, the outlook that is heading from the west towards the east is looking a heck of a lot sunnier. So fingers crossed that this pocket of opportunity is going to sit right over the pad when it's needed, and that there aren't any lingering anvil clouds that may pop up in the wrong spot to impact the launch opportunity today. We're just about 10 minutes out from the SpaceX launch director making the call on the start of prop loads, so that'll be the one of the big sticking points as SpaceX is looking for the flight of this GPS satellite manufactured by Lockheed Martin. Now T-minus 45 minutes, 18 seconds and counting. Taking a look at this animation, this is what the GPS-3 satellites look like in their on-orbit configuration. According to Lockheed Martin, the GPS constellation, which currently consists of 31 satellites that are operational on orbit, these are used by about 6 billion people around the world, and according to their calculations, generated more than $1.4 trillion in U.S. economic value over the life of the GPS constellation. Of course, GPS touching many facets of our day-to-day lives, as you're more than aware, some that you may not be thinking about very often, but of course, every time you pull up your cell phone and your favorite navigation app, that is funneled through the GPS system. Also used for emergency services, factors into our power grids, the financial systems, agriculture, and large-scale farming. Also Some large-scale construction projects as well as military operations all rely on the GPS constellation. Of the 31 satellites that are currently on orbit, about half of them are past their design lives, so that's why Lockheed Martin is working to get the remaining of these satellites up on orbit. And that, of course, will be determined in timing by the U.S. Space Force and when they are ready to call them up. If you were here for our conversation earlier in our program, you heard from Lockheed Martin engineer about the M code, the military code, which helps to protect these satellites from interference from nefarious actors and allows both secured access for civilians as well as for warfighters around the world. These GPS-3 satellites will eventually make their way for the next generation of the GPS constellation, which are referred to as the GPS-3F satellites, which feature enhanced civilian search and rescue as well as 60 times better anti-jamming software. The first of the GPS-3F satellites is targeting a launch coming up in 2027. And that'll be on board a United Launch Alliance Vulcan rocket. Taking a look at our live chat here, I see moderator Rick Donner has joined us today. Good to see you, Rick. I want to thank Rick for not only gifting 5 Spaceflight Now memberships, but also upgrading his membership to the Launch Director level. Really appreciate both of those, Rick. Thanks for your ongoing and elevated support for what we do here at Spaceflight Now. Those who are able to have membership at the higher level allows us to keep our base level membership at the current price. So for those who value what you get from our broadcast as well as our written pieces on spaceflightnow.com, we certainly appreciate your support for all that we do here at Spaceflight Now and helping to make that possible and more robust as the years go on. Taking a look at the chat as well, want to thank new channel member Dark Cluster R joining us with membership at the PAL leader level. Thanks to Captain Action for gifting a Spaceflight Now membership, and to Monkey Tree Rob for the $5 super chat, who says, "Rain, rain, go away. Let's get this rocket on its way." Glad that Will Robinson Smith, his voice is back. And yes, feeling considerably better as far as the voice is concerned, although now just dealing with our regularly scheduled Florida pollen, so it'll just be what it is until things clear out a little bit more. Thankfully, the rain helps to tamp things down just a bit. Coming up on 1 o'clock here on the East Coast. 1700 UTC for our friends around the world. Just about 38 and a half minutes to go before the planned launch of this Falcon 9 rocket, weather permitting. I want to go back to another part of our conversation that we had with Malik out at the 40th Space Symposium in Colorado Springs, Colorado. In this part of the conversation, we talked about the importance of these fast-tracked missions for the GPS constellation, both the Rapid Response Trailblazer, which launched in December of 2024, and of course the mission that is coming up here in just about 38 minutes. Here you'll listen to this part of the conversation where he talks about the reasoning for that, not only for logistical reasons and to help test the capabilities for all of those involved, but also an important part of getting this key capability on orbit. So again, this is another part of our conversation with Malik Musawir, Vice President of Navigation Systems for Lockheed Martin.
So I think it's really about closing out the GPS-3 capability and getting those on orbit because, like I mentioned, each generation of GPS satellite is an additive effect, or in some cases a multiplicative effect of what it can offer. So GPS-3s are 8 times the power and the ability to provide the critical signals that our warfighters need. Getting that into the constellation as fast as possible is certainly something we're passionate about and something that our customer is excited about, which is why we're looking forward to having a very eventful 2025 with the rest of these GPS-3 vehicles being launched. And then that also sets the stage for that next generation. So GPS-3Fs are going to be available for launch at the end of 2026 and potentially launching as early as 2027. So I think to your point, it's not so much about changing the cadence, but I would say more about getting the 3s into the constellation, supporting mission, and then setting the stage for what's next, which is the 3Fs.
And those 3F satellites currently in manufacturing work at the Lockheed Martin facilities in Littleton, Colorado. In fact, as recently as February of this year, they completed what's known as the core mate on the first of the GPS 3F satellites, which will be dubbed Space Vehicle 13. Currently T-minus 35 minutes, 56 seconds in counting to the planned launch of this Falcon 9 rocket, coming up on a key milestone here in our countdown as SpaceX is going to be making a determination, or rather has made a determination on the start of prop load. And if that go-ahead, in fact, was given, we should be seeing some signs of fueling on the Falcon 9 rocket over the course of the next few minutes. Just past the 35-minute mark at this point, if the go-ahead was given, SpaceX would now be tanking the Falcon 9 rocket for today's launch of the GPS 3-7 mission. We're looking near the base of the rocket now for signs of liquid oxygen flowing on board the vehicle's first stage. Looking at our view from the press site, if you see just above the branch that is crossing the Falcon 9, you can see actually sort of a couple of branches that are going kitty corner across the first stage booster. Just above that second one, where you see the color gradient on the Falcon 9 rocket start to change, that's the point where we'll start to see a little bit of a frost ring form as the super cold densified liquid oxygen begins to flow on board the vehicle. Given the temperature difference between the booster and the considerably warmer, more fluid Florida air, we'll start to see a little bit of vapor in that part of the rocket as well. Worth noting that teams are still in a Phase 2 lightning warning. Unclear if, given the Phase 2 lightning warning that is still in place, if fueling would be allowed to proceed at this point in time. SpaceX is currently targeting the end of today's launch window, so if they are not tanking the Falcon 9 rocket, that would, of course, result in a stand down for the mission today. Standing by for either an update from Lockheed Martin, SpaceX, or just a lack of... Actually, we do have word from SpaceX in the last minute that propellant load is underway for today's Falcon 9 launch. So hard to see there, but SpaceX does confirm that tanking is beginning for this mission, so they're going to give it the old college try and see if they can find that good pocket of weather to get this GPS satellite on its way. Weather is currently 50% favorable for liftoff right now, which, while a coin toss does sound less than ideal, it is actually about 5% better than the forecast that they had coming into today's launch opportunities. So they're going to go for it and at least target that T0 at the end of the launch window today at 1:37 p.m. Eastern, 17:37 UTC. For those of you who are just joining us, you're watching Spaceflight Now's live coverage of the GPS 3-7 Space Vehicle number 8 mission, the latest of the GPS, or Global Positioning System, satellites getting ready to enter into a medium Earth orbit following its flight on top of a SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket. Taking a live look at the pad there at Space Launch Complex 40 from the perspective of Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. We are eagerly awaiting and watching the weather, which is currently still in a Phase 2 lightning warning for areas across both the Kennedy Space Center as well as Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. Taking necessary precautions to keep ourselves and our camera equipment safe, but of course wanting to bring you live pictures as best we can across the spaceport. If you haven't already, you can do us a big favor and support this coverage just by clicking the like button, share the stream. A little bit hard to catch that update, but it did sound like some of the watches may have been extended. Or, correction, the Phase 2 has been terminated, which is good news. Okay, so a little bit of a combination of factors here. The Phase 2 lightning warning has been allowed to expire at this point. The Phase 1 lightning watch has been extended out. So as we're in the lunchtime hour, to make folks just a little bit hungrier, but to use an analogy, we've gone from a fully assembled taco that was essentially on the plate ready to eat to now back to a combination of the various mixings. So you've got the diced tomato and the onions and the taco shell and the ground beef that's waiting there to be assembled. Essentially, that lightning watch means that there's the conditions in the greater vicinity that could yield impactful thunderstorms around the various areas of the spaceport, but we are not back at the warning stage where it is a potentially immediate threat, aka the taco is ready to be eaten for lunch. I know, making John Pisani very hungry, so apologies for folks out there, but just to give that good culinary analogy for now. That said, the taco analogy is one that the 45th Weather Squadron also uses, so not just pulling this out of thin air. Want to thank the roughly 2,800 of you who are watching with us live. If you haven't already, be sure to hit that like button and share the stream. Appreciate you being with us today. Now 23 minutes, 34 seconds to go. I want to thank Channel member Lisa Lynch for a $20 super chat, who says, I want to thank Will Robinson Smith, Callistia Lee, Rick Donner, and all the mods and very helpful members. Just love watching these launches with you all. Such a great group of humans. Thanks for letting me hitch a ride. We certainly appreciate you doing more than just hitching a ride, Lisa. Thank you so much for supporting what we do here at Spaceflight Now. Also, thanks to Callistia Lee for a very generous $20 super chat, saying, that's it, Will owes us all tacos now. And I will run that up the chain to my boss and see if we have a taco budget, but I sincerely doubt it. I'm told it's only on Tuesdays, and sad to say, it is Friday the 30th, so no dice. Currently 22 minutes, 40 seconds to go, though, before we get a Falcon 9 launch. Again, that is assuming that the weather is cooperating. As SpaceX was stepping into the fueling process, weather was still a coin toss for an opportunity for a liftoff. Quite notably, far less rain now in the vicinity of the pad, which is good, but of course, it is not just in the immediate area of the pad that SpaceX is going to be watching. It is also up through the launch trajectory as the rocket will climb uphill. Once it does leave the pad, that is going to be of note. We'll talk about the trajectory with a little more detail on the other side of the big vent, but we are just about a minute away from that process starting. And that's when SpaceX will be conditioning the feed lines there at the pad prior to second stage liquid oxygen load. Now T-minus 20 minutes, 20 seconds. You see the big vent is getting underway here at the pad. Process for fueling continuing to move along on schedule and as expected. We're just about 20 minutes away now from SpaceX being able to launch this Falcon 9 rocket, weather permitting. Time now T minus 16 minutes, 39 seconds and counting. You can see the big vent is starting to taper off there at the pad as SpaceX is transitioning to loading liquid oxygen on board the Falcon 9's second stage. And you're up. Time now T minus 12 minutes and counting. As we're getting ready to see SpaceX launch its Falcon 9 rocket coming up here in just about less than 12 minutes now. Today's flight will be the 482nd Falcon 9 launch to date. Let's talk a little bit more about the workhorse vehicle for the launch company. Falcon 9 rocket stands at 70 meters or 229 feet in height with a diameter of 3.66 meters or 12 feet. Majority of that is made up by the Falcon 9's first stage, the bottom two-thirds of the rocket. This particular booster, B-1092, is making its fourth flight to space and back today. At the base of the first stage are 9 Merlin engines, which burn a rocket-grade kerosene and liquid oxygen, producing 1.7 million pounds of thrust. Around the engine compartment are black carbon fiber landing legs that will be used to land the first stage on the drone ship. Again, today they're using the drone ship called A Shortfall of Gravitas. Above the first stage is the inner stage. This is a composite structure consisting of an aluminum honeycomb core surrounded by carbon fiber. In the image on the right-hand side of your screen, you can see the deployable hypersonic grid fins. These are titanium winglets that provide stability and steering for the Falcon 9 rocket as it comes back through the atmosphere, tail first like a big old dart heading towards the drone ship. At the top of the inner stage are 3 mechanical latches that attach the vehicle's second stage. The first stage main engine cutoff. High-pressure helium is used to release those latches, and 4 pneumatic pushers ensure a clean separation. Also, the second stage engine nozzle is housed safely inside the inner stage adapter until stage separation. Speaking of that second stage, the upper stage, the Falcon 9 rocket, powered by a single modified Merlin engine called a Merlin vacuum engine, or an MVAC engine. It's equipped with a large nozzle which is optimized for burns the vacuum of space, hence the name. It produces more than 220,500 pounds of thrust, and it will be fired twice on today's flight to place the GPS satellite on its way to medium Earth orbit. Second burn coming quite a bit later than we typically would see for or just a good bit later actually than for a Falcon 9 launch for Starlink satellites. That second burn coming up at about T plus 1 hour, 3 minutes, and 31 seconds. And that'll set up the GPS satellite to be deployed at about T plus 1 hour, 29 minutes, and 20 seconds. Finally, at the top of the Falcon 9 stack are the payload fairings, which are currently encapsulating the GPS-3 mission satellite, known as Space Vehicle Number 8. Fairings are made up of a carbon composite material and stand 13.1 meters, or 43 feet in height, and are 5.2 meters, or 17.1 feet in diameter. The 2 fairing halves will be recovered a little further downrange from where the first stage booster lands on the drone ship, and they gently splash down under the support of steerable parachutes following their atmospheric re-entry. Just a little under 9 minutes to go before the flight of this Falcon 9 rocket. I want to go ahead to a couple of images we have of the actual GPS satellite itself. If we can go to those here in just a second. This first image coming up will be of the GPS satellite, Space Vehicle Number 7, as it looked in its configuration being processed at Lockheed Martin facilities in Littleton, Colorado. This was as it was being boxed up and prepared to transfer to the facilities at Astrotech here in Florida. This will be the 8th of the GPS 3 satellites that are heading into a medium Earth orbit. Here's a picture of what the satellite looked like as it was being encapsulated inside the Falcon 9 payload fairings that you see there live at the pad right now. As we're coming up to the 7-minute mark ahead of flight, shortly SpaceX will be running a small amount of liquid oxygen through the plumbing and turbo pumps, helping to protect the engines from the risk of thermal shock and damage during the startup sequence. Coming up on now 5.5 minutes to go at this point. SpaceX is less than a minute away from the strong back retract sequence. When the clamp arms just meet the payload fairings will open up, and then the transporter erector, or the strong back, will recline a few degrees away from the Falcon 9 rocket and then stay in that position until liftoff. Taking a look at the Falcon 9 rocket on its second stage. This image captured by one of our photographers, Michael Kane, in the lead up to launch. You can see the gray band that is present around the vehicle's second stage. If you weren't with us for the earlier part of our broadcast, that gray band is used to protect the propellant that is on the vehicle's second stage and keep it more thermally consistent as the vehicle goes through a long coast phase, or in certain mission profiles is going to be in the sun or in the Earth's shadow for extended periods of time. It'll help to ensure that the propellant on the second stage either doesn't get colder than SpaceX wants it to, or alternatively considerably warmer. Less than 4 minutes to go. You can see the clamp arms beneath the payload fairings have opened up, and the transporter erector is going to be reclining back away from the vehicle now from the SpaceX timeline. Just a little bit of housekeeping here. The SpaceX clock that you can see a little bit behind the real-time clock that you see in the upper right-hand corner of the screen. Reason being, our clock is in real time, and what you're seeing from SpaceX, of course, is on a slight delay. So as long as we have tracking views, the Falcon 9 rocket will be making our callouts based off of real-time events until we are solely reliant on the SpaceX tracking views. Now, just under 2 minutes to go. At this point, the Falcon 9 rocket shall be fully loaded with 1 million pounds of propellant. SpaceX tracking no issues with the rocket itself, continuing to watch the weather. With about a minute and a half to go, you're seeing the ground gas closeouts now on the Falcon 9 rocket. One minute and counting. We're now just awaiting the SpaceX launch director to give their go for launch. Should happen momentarily.
This is the mission director. Go for launch.
And with that go for launch, it appears that the weather has cooperated. We're 20 seconds away from flight. 15 seconds. And here we go. In 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Engine ignition. And liftoff. Liftoff of the GPS 3-7 Space Vehicle 8, and the Falcon 9 has cleared the tower. Now a little more than a minute into this flight, the rocket will be passing through max Q, the point of greatest aerodynamic pressure on the vehicle. Falcon 9 traveling faster than the speed of sound, passing through max Q. Coming up on MVAC chill, where they were thermally conditioned the Merlin vacuum engine. Falcon 9 traveling in a northeastern trajectory, heading away from the pad. Coming up, there will be a few different events in fairly rapid succession. We'll see first stage main engine cutoff in about 20 seconds, or MECO. That'll be followed by stage separation, then the ignition of that Merlin vacuum engine, followed by the deployment of the payload fairings currently encapsulating the GPS satellite. Should be through MECO, stage separation, and SES-1. Kind of hard to track given the brightness of the sky right now.
MVAC startup.
And good visuals, good callouts from SpaceX. You can see good stage separation. The hypersonic grid fins are deploying. Shortly we'll see the payload fairings fall away from the Falcon 9 rocket with the onboard cameras. It's going to be hard to make out given the brightness of the sky at this point in the day. And a good view of the GPS satellite there.
Fairing separation confirmed.
And Space Vehicle 8 now exposed to the vacuum of space for the first time on this mission as it begins its journey to medium Earth orbit. As we are on the 5th anniversary of the Demo 2 mission, the first flight of crew on board a SpaceX Dragon spacecraft, fitting that the recovery vessel Doug is going to be used for today's mission to recover those payload fairings. given the brightness of the sky and the amount of cloud cover, I would not expect us to be able to capture the entry burn, but that's set to begin now just about a minute and a half from now based off the SpaceX timeline, just about T plus 6 minutes and 8 seconds. That burn will last a little less than 30 seconds in duration. As you can see with the first stage booster, it's starting to make its trip back down to the drone ship of Shortfall of Gravitas. Now about 110 kilometers in altitude. Confirmation from SpaceX that both the first and second stages are following a nominal trajectory at this point in the flight. The first stage booster that is targeting the drone ship B-1092 in the SpaceX fleet is in the midst of its fourth trip to space and back, targeting that drone ship landing. A successful touchdown for SpaceX would mark the 454th booster landing to date. We're coming up on that first stage entry burn here in mere moments. Let's listen for that call out.
Stage 1, entry burn startup.
And again, this burn will last a little less than 30 seconds in total, using 3 of the 9 Merlin engines at the base of the booster, which is illustrated by the new SpaceX graphic at the bottom left-hand corner of your screen.
Stage 1, entry burn shutdown.
With the conclusion of the entry burn, we're going to be seeing a few events fairly quickly once again. The first stage landing burn is coming up at just past the 8-minute mark. That'll be followed seconds later by the cutoff of the Merlin vacuum engine on the second stage. First stage landing should happen just about 8.5 minutes post liftoff. Or the call at stage 2 is entering into terminal guidance, which means that it is about to conclude its current burn. Coming up on the start of the landing burn momentarily. Let's listen for that call out.
Stage 1, landing burn.
And there's that call out for landing burn startup of the Falcon 9 first stage.
Landing leg deploy.
Nominal orbit insertion.
And there you saw and heard the call
Stage
out.
1 landing confirmed.
There you saw and heard the call out for successful landing of our Falcon 9 rocket. We also heard the call out for SECO 1. Again, this was the 4th launch and landing for this first stage.
And the second stage is now embarking on its first coast phase, which will last about an hour before a second restart of Merlin vacuum engine, also known as SES-2. We're going to take a break during that coast and we'll return just before SES-2. See you then.
And as you heard, SpaceX is now entering into the first coast phase with the upper stage of the Falcon 9 rocket. You can see they're just off of the coast of Canada as the upper stage continues on. The next burn of the Merlin vacuum engine is coming up at T plus 1 hour, 3 minutes, and 31 seconds. That burn will last for a little less than a minute. And the Falcon 9 upper stage will deploy the GPS-3 space vehicle satellite at T plus 1 hour, 29 minutes, and 20 seconds. As we are continuing on in this coast phase, we're going to get our launch replays ready for you. A little bit of coasting entertainment here. In the meantime, I want to thank a number of folks for your very generous support for our live launch coverage today. Want to welcome in new channel member Justin Broderick, joining us with membership at the pad leader level. Also, welcome aboard to Mandy L, joining us with leadership also at the pad leader level. Got some gifting going on. Justin Broderick gifting a Spaceflight Now membership shortly after joining, and Cappy Cross gifting 5 Spaceflight Now memberships. Appreciate that for the both of you, and to our 6 newest channel members, welcome aboard. We're glad to have you with us. If you haven't already, be sure to thank Justin and Cappy in the live chat, and we hope you decide to stick around with channel membership. The taco analogy seems to have struck a chord today. Channel member Deb with a $5 super chat saying go towards the taco fund. And doing their best Homer Simpson impression. Tacos. Thanks to Don Flea for a $10 super chat. Thank you, Don, for your support today. Big thanks to Chuck Close for a very generous $25 super chat. Another one of our channel members. Good to see you, Chuck. Thank you so much for your support at that level. Deb with a $10 super chat. Another channel member saying that's for celebratory tacos. Didn't expect to see it go. And yeah, it was a little touch and go throughout the course of the launch countdown, but certainly happy for all the folks from the Colorado area who were traveling from Lockheed Martin, as well as the Space Force's Space Systems Command team that traveled from California in the El Segundo area to be out here, as well as teams from Colorado as well. So glad they didn't have to extend their travel plans due to weather snafu. Thanks to Beverly Knuckles for a very generous $25 super chat. Thank you so much, Beverly. Who says a top shelf margarita to go with those tacos, and in Texas can be to go. Yeah, there are some nice entertainment areas in Texas, and was not as familiar with the alcohol to go policy as we were before. What you saw just there on your screen was a rare glimpse inside the propellant tank for the Falcon 9 upper stage. Oh, you saw it just again very, very briefly. A nice glimpse inside some of the engineering that make the Falcon 9 rocket successful as it is. And we don't often see inside the propellant tank, just broadly speaking, but certainly while it is in that microgravity environment, that is an extra special treat. So inadvertent or not, whoever made the call to hit the button and share that view, certainly appreciate it as a nice little glimpse inside the workhorse vehicle for SpaceX. Our thanks to Donald Naber for a 100 Peruvian Sol super chat. Very kind of you. Thank you so much for supporting us at that level. Continuing the celebratory taco theme, saying I'll buy the soda for us sober folks. Also want to welcome a new channel member, Ivalincho. Hopefully I'm somewhere in the ballpark of correctly pronouncing that right. I fear I'm not, but thank you so much for joining with membership at the Spacecraft Commander level, helping to keep our entry-level memberships at the value that they are right now. Really appreciate that support. And a thanks to Marcus Me Too, another channel member, for a $10 super chat, who says thanks for the great coverage. As we're still getting some pretty stellar views of the GPS-3 space vehicle number 8 satellite as it continues to cruise during this initial coast phase in the mission. Now, a little more than 22 minutes into the flight in real time, you can see the Falcon 9 rocket has passed over the UK and now crossing over mainland Europe. As we are awaiting our launch replays to get those up for you guys, letting you know our next Falcon 9 launch is coming up tomorrow afternoon from over at Vandenberg Space Force Base as things currently stand. Looking for the flight of Starlink 11-18 with a window opening up at 1:01 p.m. Pacific, 4:01 p.m. Eastern, or 20:01 UTC for our friends around the world. The mission was at one point going to be later today, but slid by a day. Our next planned launch from here in Florida, looking at June 2nd, with a launch of the Starlink 12-19 mission, heading off from Pad 40 as well. Assuming that this mission follows the pattern of the recent flights as part of Starlink Group 12, we would expect to see that mission also carry 13 V2 mini satellites that have direct-to-cell capabilities. In the last series of missions going to, or that are part of Group 12, we had Starlink 12-22, 12-15, and 12-23 that had a total of 23 Starlink satellites on board, 13 of which featured direct-to-cell capabilities. So we'll look forward to seeing an update from SpaceX to confirm if that's going to be what's on board for this upcoming flight on June 2nd at the earliest. Upper stage passing into the terminus here from orbital day to nighttime. And with our replays now ready to go, let's go ahead and tap into those, starting with the fixed view from our photographer, John Pisani, here at the press site. Moving along to our Cape Side tracker from Adam Bernstein. Unfortunately, our replay system didn't capture audio this go around, so don't have to try to fiddle with YouTube. You're not missing audio right now at this point. And this last view from Pete Carson's with Max Q Productions got mostly blocked by some clouds from his vantage point, but did manage to get this nice point of takeoff. Time now T plus 33 minutes, 11 seconds and counting. Getting some good views from the Falcon 9's second stage at this point in time. We are just about 30 minutes away at this point from the ignition of the Merlin vacuum engine on the second stage. So with our launch replays now in the rearview mirror as we await that second stage engine burn, we're going to go ahead and let you listen into some space tunes, and we'll be back with commentary when SpaceX is ready to make that second burn. You're watching a live coverage from Spaceflight now of the GPS 3-7 Space Vehicle 8 mission. Time now T plus 1 hour, 1 minute, 56 seconds and counting per the SpaceX timeline of things. We're coming up on the start of the second burn of the Merlin vacuum engine on the Falcon 9's second stage. Ignition of that Merlin vacuum engine set to begin at about T plus 1 hour, 3 minutes and 31 seconds. This burn will last just a little less than a minute in duration. Let's go ahead and listen in for the call out for the burn.
MVAC ignition.
And a good call for the start of MVAC ignition. Again, the burn lasting less than a minute. This will help raise the upper stage and put it on the correct trajectory to allow for the deployment of the GPS 3-7 Space Vehicle number 8 satellite. Got about 10 seconds or so remaining on this second burn of the Merlin vacuum engine here. Let's listen for the call out for shutdown.
MVAC shutdown.
And with a good shutdown of the upper stage, there will be one more coast phase now, setting up the GPS satellite to deploy. And you can see how the trajectory has been adjusted. Heard of the call out for a nominal payload orbit insertion. We're going to go ahead and return you back to our space cruising tunes. And we will resume our commentary as SpaceX prepares to deploy this satellite built by Lockheed Martin Space. You're watching Spaceflight Now's live coverage of the GPS 3-7 Space Vehicle 8 mission. And welcome back to our live coverage of the GPS 3-7 Space Vehicle 8. Seeing some gorgeous views of the Falcon 9 upper stage there, and some glimpses of the GPS satellite as it's getting ready to be deployed in now less than 2 minutes. As we're awaiting the send-off of the latest GPS vehicle heading into a medium Earth orbit, let's take a moment to just walk back through some of the good launch photos that we saw as the Falcon 9 rocket was making its ascent from Space Launch Complex 40 here at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. It's a view of Michael Caine's perspective there at the Cape. Go through a few of his photos here briefly. Looking back at some of these launch photos, you'd be hard-pressed to say that there were thunderstorms that were threatening liftoff. We're now about 30 seconds away from the deployment of this GPS satellite, so let's go ahead and listen in.
Payload deployment is coming up in about 10 seconds, and you can see a beautiful view on your screen of the payload here.
Payload separation confirmed.
And there's that call out for payload deployment.
And that wraps up our launch coverage for this mission. GPS 3-7 is our second accelerated readiness launch for the government after the Rapid Response Trailblazer 1 mission in December 2024. And we have 12 more missions for the NRO, Space Force, and the Space Development Agency on our manifest this year.
All of us here at SpaceX would like to thank the United States Space Force for entrusting us with today's mission. We also want to thank the Eastern Range and Federal Aviation Administration for supporting today's launch. And a big thanks to all of you for your support and for tuning in to today's mission.
Remember to follow at SpaceX on X for launch updates and check spacex.com/launches for more. And we'll see you here again very soon.
And there you have it with a good deployment of the GPS 3-7 Space Vehicle 8 spacecraft. We're going to go ahead and begin to wind down our live coverage as well. Taking a look at the mission stats, though, as they currently stand. The flight of the first stage booster was the fourth for B-1092. Today's mission marked the 482nd Falcon 9 launch to date. This was SpaceX's 65th Falcon 9 flight of the year so far, the 421st Falcon booster reflight, with the launch of a booster that has flown at least once. This was SpaceX's 143rd orbital launch within the last 365 days, the 254th orbital flight from Space Launch Complex 40, and the 309th overall orbital launch from this pad as well. With the bar chart representation, here's where SpaceX is on the year so far. SpaceX says they are still aiming for about 172 Falcon 9 launches on the year by the end of 2025, so look forward to a ramped up cadence over the weeks and months to come. Moving on to some recovery stats, this was the 111th good landing on the drone ship, A Shortfall of Gravitas. That marked the 365th SpaceX drone ship landing and the 354th overall booster landing to date. Finally, with some industry stats, this was the 46th orbital flight from the Sunshine State of Florida, the 69th from U.S. soil, the 75th from U.S. Rocket Company, and the 118th orbital launch around the globe. 3 orbital failures so far on the year, and here's where our pie chart now currently stands. Again, we'll look forward to seeing you back here tomorrow for a launch from Vandenberg Space Force Base, the flight of the Starlink 11-18 mission, barring another launch delay out west. That'll be followed back here over at Pad 40 with the flight of Starlink 12-19. And then in the days to follow, we're tracking the upcoming flight of AX Mission 4, or Axiom Mission 4, which will send 4 astronauts, including former NASA astronaut Peggy Whitson, up to the International Space Station for a roughly 2-week stay with lots of science and technology demonstrations on their docket. Want to thank all the folks who've made today's launch opportunity possible. A big thanks to our friends Pete Karstens with Max Q Productions and Chuck and Jen Briggs with C&J Images for helping to track the Falcon 9 rocket. Big thanks to our photography team, John Pisani, Michael Kane, Adam Bernstein. You can find their handles at X here on your screen. Want to thank our moderators in the live chat who've been helping us out throughout the duration of this coverage. Thanks to Rick Donner and Callistia Lee for your help today, as well as Jeff Hansen helping us out, and Aussie Space Girl, all keeping things kosher in the live chat. Appreciate the 4 of you. Thanks to our Spaceflight Now editor, Stephen Young, for running the technical operations of the broadcast. Most importantly, thanks to you for wherever you have been watching from. We appreciate your time and attention in choosing us here at Spaceflight Now for your live launch entertaining needs, and we'll be back with you the next time we've got an orbital flight on our plate. For all of us here at Spaceflight Now, I am Will Robinson Smith. Remember, be good to yourselves, be good to others, and we will see you next time, folks. And until then, bye-bye.